Well, here we are in my patented spray booth. No, actually, this is a FedEx box that I actually sliced open. I'll show you a pic. And it has proved to be a very useful, inexpensive little spray booth. Because I'm using acrylics, I'm just using, things like the Stynol Res and that sort of stuff. I don't get too many noxious fumes. I only need a window open, maybe a fan on, and away I go. Now, look, we're going to do the white bits, right? Now, I had a look through the kit, and interestingly, the turret, the entire inside of the turret will need to be white. This is the colour, right? And the turret's all on sprue H. And in fact, normally in a kit you get a turret, but with this one, the turret is made up. It's plates. So you actually build it just like they would and rivet the sucker together. Anyhow, all the parts are on sprue H, which is handy. And if you go that way, all of those sides get white. So that's great. So we can paint those on the sprue. That's easy. Not a problem there. Now I'm going to be using Stynol Res White, which is going to work both as my primer and it'll be the colour of the interior, done in one. And one little trick with the old Stynol Res, never bloody organised, is get yourself some of these, right? Alright, they said Harry Houdini didn't have balls, so he bought some. Steel balls, shakers, this only costs like half a shekel. It's you get like a squillion of them. I don't know how many that is. You'll have to check your own system. But a lot. You get a lot. Anyhow, put a ball in your Stynol Res. In fact, put stainless steel balls in any of your paint and, you got rattle cans. Well, it makes it easier to shake them up. It really does. Especially the Stynol Res stuff because it is thick shit. It really is. Oh dear, I'm bumping everything. It is thick stuff. Anyhow, I'll give it a bit of a shake and it'll need another one. There's basically the body that we had ready, and that's going to get a lick of paint. It's all dried really nicely and rigid, and I test fitted that part in for the floor, and that fits perfectly. In fact, the part for the floor hides all this absolutely lovely detail. So it's a bit sort of disappointing. I can't. I've got no light there. I showed you last time. I'll do a little close-up pic. Right. So that's all the lovely detail on this thing, and that all gets covered up by that floor plate. Oh well, good on you, man. So yeah, I won't need to do too much in there. But anyhow, I digress. That's the carcass. That's going to get done. Now, there is sprue A, and sprue A has basically got some top pieces here, where the turret's going to go on, and some other flappy, foldy little hatchy things. And again, if you turn it up this way, all of those need to be painted white. So that's nice. And then sprue B, again on sprue B you've got a series of hatches and things, and they all need to have the white on the inside. And there's also, this goes behind the driver, which is sort of like his little vanity curtain, in case he needs to do some quiet little driver things and doesn't want to be disturbed. It says, guys, just avert your eyes. I'm changing my socks. Right, so it's as easy as that. All I have to do is set those out ready to go. Oh, except for the piece I cut out, which I thought I'd be using, this tiny little one. But that's okay. I've whacked a bit of Tamiya tape, which will be on the outside of it, and I'll just pop him down there. So he'll get painted with everything else. Right, we're ready to go. I've waffled on, and let's get some Stynol Res on this. Those parts have come up a treat, and that's all I needed for my interior. Now I haven't put a heavy coat of primer on there because one, it's basically most of it won't be seen, and two, it's going to get weathered up. I just needed that the white on there, so I put a pretty thin coat in there. So that should take a little wash and come up perfectly. But that Stynol Res, geez, it goes on everything. Now, I did have a little issue when I was shooting it on. These parts, they seem to resist a little bit, and it was almost as though there was mould release agent on there, because I hadn't washed my sprues. I don't usually with armour, I've never had to. It never seems to be a problem. I mean, I wash sprues when I'm doing aircraft when you want a really smooth, shiny coat. But armour, unless I really see something, and I never have, I just spray the shit on. Well, there was some gunk and some grease. Now, it's still gone on. The Stynol Res has managed to push through, and these all won't be seen anyway, but there's a tiny bit of a sort of a, a little cracked pattern there I'm going to go with that. I don't know if you can see, it's sort of like an orange peely thing. I'm going to leave that. I think it's a nice little basque hair there. I'm going to leave that because that actually is going to work really well for my interior, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see any of those things. Doesn't matter anyway, because substantial res you can hand touch up later on. Here's all my parts. I've got everything painted up the colours they need to be for the interior. So there's that the bottom plate there, that's going to slide in there, cover all that lovely detail. And there's the hull interior and various flaps and things. And then there's the parts that go here around the driver's cabin. They're all painted the various browns and blacks and colours need to be, and even a bit of bronze there on what is, I think, a fire extinguisher. Don't know. Anyhow, that can all now go inside, and because I've pre-painted it on the sprues, it was very easy to paint the parts, and it should mean they'll go in and look very clean, and there'll be minimal touch-up. There's some really fiddly little parts. In fact, there's some tiny little parts you have to be so careful with. There's this little business here which goes next to the what I think is a fire extinguisher. It has a tiny little sprue sticking out of it, and that's snapped off with the weight of the paintbrush. I was a little bit too vigorous there. I'm really happy with the way these two little parts turned out, especially the bit of dry brushing that managed to get happening there on those dials. This one caused me the most amount of grief. And try as I could, it has little edges as far as I can tell on this little brown bit, which is sort of his backrest of leather, I imagine. It doesn't really have much of a ridge to run your brush up against, and I just kept making a mess of it. So I left it last night, decided what I would do is I'd try this old trick. And I very carefully Tamiya tape masked around that. So let me throw some paint on that and see if I can't get that looking a little tidier. Now I found it was better to cut that one off the sprue because the sprue gates were getting in the way. So I've got just a little bit of paint, which I've taken from the cap, so it's not, it's fairly sort of dry, and I'll very carefully paint. Because even though you've got masking, the idea still is to try and paint a straight line. If you slather it everywhere, invariably you end up with a bloody mess. So, using the very tip of a nice pointy brush, and this isn't a small brush, this is a, what's this one? It's number 5. But the trick is, as I found, is you just need a really good brush with a good point. As I prepare to start assembling this interior and putting these parts in, I've removed them from the sprue and done a bit of a clean up. Now what I thought I'd show you is how remarkably good these Mineshima shear cutters are, because normally you wouldn't do this. This would be a nightmare, right? You've got a tiniest little part there, right? It is, I'll show you a thumbnail. Okay, my thumbnail is bigger than it. And you don't want to lose it in the carpet monster, so you would never do this. But watch and be amazed. Alright, so there's your part. I'm going to go right up to it. Did you notice something? That part normally, with a lot of your sprue cutters, went bing and go in the carpet monster. These guys cut so fine, so sharp, so beautifully, without twisting or distorting the part, that not only is there bugger all plastic to take off that, right, there's virtually a gnat's scab of stuff to pull off that, and that makes my life so much easier. So all these parts I could cut them right up close and not be worried at all about any damage, and then all I've got to do is get in with a file and very gently file the tiniest bits off there. This stops damage. It means that you're not losing things that are pinging off while you're trying to scrape great slads of bloody sprue off them. Tell you what, get yourself some of these things. They're called Mineshima in my country, but I'll put a link here to Will's video again, because I cannot recommend these highly enough. They save your life. All right, home stretch. Everything's painted, all ready to go. I've touched up all the little pieces that I filed. It's very interesting, those little pedals there. There were so many sprue gates around them, which were there to protect them, which was kind of good, which meant that they you could cut them all off and they stayed together well. And that's a good bit of engineering. I did enjoy that. All my other parts are painted, ready to go. It's basically just put this thing together now, and then we'll add a little bit of wash and a tiny little bit of chipping and weathering, and the interior is done. say that was fiddly is an understatement. Those little fellas are a little bit tricky to get in, but they're allocating pins and holes, and you can get everything in, and you've just got to follow the instructions, finally. Although I think my method, what's worked for me, by cementing the hull together first, I haven't had to worry about both putting fiddly bits on, then trying to join the sides in, hoping that everything didn't fall off. I think either way has its positive and its negative points. My way gave me a nice firm body that then I could work with, and it didn't take much fiddling to get in that floor and do the things I wanted to do. And it also means everything's painted and everything's set up exactly the way I want. So my method works for me. That might work for you. It's got me a very clean result, and I'm very happy with that. All the parts are in. They're all looking great. Now, it does need its weathering to stop it looking sort of so cartoonish, but I've put only tiny amounts of Tamiya thin in there to lock those parts into place, and that's all they need. I didn't want to slather it everywhere and ruin the paint that I've got there. So I need to really let that set. So I'm going to leave that overnight. That's what I'm going to choose to do. Let that interior just settle down and everything sort of get happy wherever it's sitting. And then tomorrow night I'll get on with the weathering and get the rest of this done. So we'll pick up on this next week when I show you everything else that I get done, which will be the weathering, and we'll start on the outside and we'll get onto some wheels with a bit of luck, yes. But the FT-17 is coming along and I'm pretty happy with it so far. This is a great kit. It's little, don't get me wrong, this is a little fiddly tank, but look, it's quite joyful to put together, and I'm really chuffed with that interior. So I hope you liked the video, and I hope you keep watching the series, and watch out later this week. It will be my 100th episode. That's worth waiting for. All right, well, that's it. It's goodbye from Australia, and it's hooroo from Harry Houdini.